First of all, I'd like to say hello to teacher and my classmates here. My name is Nhe Nara. I'm a weekend session student, and today I'm gonna present to all of you about my part chapter 11, studying language, and I do it just as individual. Here's my contents. We have two big parts. A. Studying structure and use, divided into four. A1. Studying study technique. A2. Language study in lesson sequences. A3. Known or unknown language. A4. Choosing study activities. B. Examples of language study activities, divided into 3 points. B1. Introducing new language. B2. Discovery activities, and B3. Remembering. He is studying language. How we define the language study? What is it? The language study refers to any stage in lesson where both students and teachers focus on a specific feature of the language in order to understand it better. Which means that when we study new language, it's not like our mother language. It must be difficult. So, in order to study new language, we have to learn here about the specific feature, grammatical uses, like the language forms. We studied exactly forms of the new language. And the immediate goal is to increase knowledge of the language system. The students should not learn only under direction of the teacher, but also do their own research, which means that outside the class, students have to do their research, mean they have to do such like self-learning or self-research on to recover something new. They have to learn by their own, like at home, like this. Studying structure and use focuses on the structure and use of language forms. For example, like the vocabulary, including the meanings of words, their lexical grammar. Example, the fact that enjoy can be followed by an ing form but not by an infinitive. For here, which means that when we study new language, we have to learn about the structure and uses. Example, the word enjoy. What should we use the next of the word enjoy? Enjoy learning or enjoy to learn? So here for its structure, enjoy plus verb ing, not infinitive form. We cannot use like enjoy to learn. So we use enjoy learning, enjoy studying, enjoy listening, like this. Because of the next part or the next structure is we ing or verb ing. Collocation rules. Example, like we say even-handed and not even-footed. Yes, collocation here, we always say like even-handed. We don't say even-footed. Pronunciation. Pronunciation is part of the structure and uses of other language like English. We have to pronounce the word correctly. Sometimes we can pronounce correctly like the native speaker, but we can try to pronounce like can be understood by the others. And the last one, spelling. Let's move to the next slides here. A1. Language study techniques. Used to ensure that students not only understand the meaning of a language form and how it is used in its chain of text, but also clear about its construction, which means that the teacher has to use the technique to clarify that the student don't understand only the form of the language or how to use it in exchange or text, but also clear about the construction, clear about how to use it correctly and understand it well. And here also divided into demonstration. The first one is demonstration. Demonstrate the language forms which we want students to study by offering a situation which shows the language in action and then modeling the language ourselves, which means that teacher have to prepare or demonstrate the language forms for the student to study. And the second one, explanation. In order to make the student understand well, the teacher have to explain the construction of language in diagrams, sometimes using the board or overhead projector. In some sorts, we can use like finger pointing to show how constructions are made. So which means that in order to explain or to make the students joyful, to make them happy, to make them understand well in the lessons, the teacher have to find ways to explain them. Like here, teacher can use diagrams or like finger pointing, like to show the constructions are made here. They are flying to America. You can see the left hand. So they are flying to America. So this one is uncontracted form, mean that the long form, the full form, and another one, the right one, they're flying to America. So this we use contracted form, mean the short form combine they with are and pronounce there. They are flying to America. So when the teacher teach students can show like finger pointing here. The right one you can see here, the finger mean the thumb and the finger together, they and are, and then pronounce there and used together called contracted form. The way of our explanation to the students depends on their age level and preference of the class, which means that in order to make the students understand well in the lesson, teacher also clarify or know well that the student can catch it well according to their age, their level of study. For example, like the students whose age under 18, whose age under 14, if the teacher teaches high, so high or like it's so heavy or difficult to catch, so that's not good for them to understand. The next one is discovery for themselves in a text or by looking at grammatical evidence in order to work out a grammatical rule, and we need to be free to be asked by the students. So here means that students are free to discover new things. They can study the language forms in the grammatical use in the course book, and then they find themselves research for new things, or mean that they find the new things by themselves, but also under the direction of the teacher, mean that under the teacher's help. They cannot research by themselves and then say, is it correct? Because I do the research, I find by myself. They cannot decide on this, but they have to ask the teacher for help as well. Like a Swedish word says that you can't be 100% sure that you found the rules. You must have the possibility to get the right rules from the teachers. Even though we have the ability to read, for example, we have the ability to read the novel, to read the science fictions, but we don't know how to find the elements. We don't know how to find the theme of the stories or the text. So this point we have to ask the teachers for help. Even though we can read, we can understand we understand a lot, but we still have to ask the teacher for help as well. The next one, accelerate reproduction, which means that ask students to repeat new words, phrases, or sentences in a controlled way, correcting them and showing approval. For this point, which means the student can be asked to repeat new words, to repeat new thing from what they have learned from the language forms. For example, like teacher taught us about the present continuous, so teacher asked them to repeat again and again in order to make them produce new thing by themselves, or produce other sentences by themselves. And then if the student make another mistakes, the teacher should show the improver, mean that the teacher should explain and motivate them to improve their learning. Yes. The next point, immediate creativity, which means that ask the students to create their own sentence using the language forms to know how well the language forms have been understood. So here, like students create the new sentences from what they have learned from the book. Like I mentioned earlier, like they learn about the language forms like present perfect, so they rewrite or they produce new sentences using the same rules from the book. The next one, check question. Check question here means to clarify if the students have understood the meaning and used well, and to measure their comprehension by asking, which means after teaching the language forms to the student, teacher should ask whether they understand well about the uses or the grammatical form of the language form, or like teacher has to ask about their comprehension, their understanding. For example, Sokha isn't as tall as Chris. Mean when the teacher teach them about the comparison, Sokha isn't as tall as Chris. So teacher can ask, who's taller? Who's taller? So as we see the sentence here, isn't as tall as Chris, so mean that Chris is taller. So here is just to emphasize and to make sure that they understand well in the lesson. The next point, A2, language study in lesson sequences. The status of language study depends on why and when an action happens. You know the word sequences. Sequences mean in order. We stand in order, like the sentence or an action of the grammar in English. We can make them in order as well. For example, like we might say, when I was watching the Kun Khmer on TV, Mr. Samnan called. Now let's consider or think about this sentence, and then decide what action happened first. Here we have was watching, past continuous, and called. Like I underline those words here, these words here, was watching. So here watching happened first, mean it was happening in a period of time, and then called mean Mr. Samnan called to interrupt while I was watching, to interrupt me. Okay. Another example, I had planned to Siem Reap before COVID-19 spread to the world. So here we have had planned, past perfect, and spread, past simple. Which one happened first? So the sequences had planned mean the past perfect happened first. First I had planned to Siem Reap, but when COVID-19 spread to the world, like spread into Cambodia, so I decided not to go to Siem Reap anymore. Another one, I had read a lot about the chapter before I made a slide presentation. We have had read and made. So here had read first and then made a slide presentation. The last one, yesterday morning I got up, had a bath, had breakfast, and went to school early. Everyone please consider on this sentence because has only one form, past simple. Got up, had a bath, had breakfast, and went to school early. Let's decide what action happened first, or which action happens first. So when we see this, the first one is the first choice, mean that the first one is happen first. Mean yesterday morning I got up and then I had a bath and then I had breakfast and then I went to school early. Yeah. Move to the next slide. A3, known or unknown language. For this point, mean that, as you know, in one class, the student ability is not the same. Students have different ability to understand or to catch the lesson taught by the teacher. So known or unknown language make sure the student's degree of linguistic knowledge and ability in English or in other language as well. Mean the ability or the degree of linguistic here mean that the language. So the ability of the language of each student has difference, mean they have different ability. Like each class can be described as mixed ability of the student, mixed ability, different ability. And for the teacher, in order to avoid teaching already known language, you know what? The teacher can help the students perform tasks and see how well use the language forms. For example, like when the school just start and then the teacher see the new students in the class, so he didn't know them, he didn't know about their ability, so he has to give them the task to do, and then he observe the ability of those students, and then he can teach them fits to their ability or to their knowledge. The next part, A4, choosing study activities. Meant to decide on what styles should be used to teach the students and how and when to have students learn it without using the same kinds of activity day after day. For him mean that while the teacher teaching in the class, he doesn't need to teach the same kinds of activities day by day, like today asking the question to the student and then tomorrow asking the question. No, mean that nothing different, nothing changed in teaching, so it might be boring. So here mean that choosing the activities, change the styles. Today asking question, tomorrow give them the game that related to the lessons to do, to perform, like this. Another one, we have following planning principles, mean to choose the study activities effectively. We have to bear general planning principles in mind. Mean we have to think about the activities which the students do before and after this study session, so we don't simply repeat the same activity again and again. Which means that if we want to teach students about the grammatical uses of the language form, so we have to bear in mind first about its uses, bear in mind first about its forms, and then we have to change style to change the activity to teach the student without repeating the same activity again and again. The next one, assessing a language study activity for use in class. Consider and justify the time we need to spend before and during the lesson. Believe that the activities demonstrates meaning and use clearly to the students. The activity that the teacher uses to teach a student, he has to think about the time limit, and then he has to think that is that activity demonstrating the meaning or the uses of the language form clearly to the student that make them understand well. The next one, evaluating a study activity after use in class. Evaluate the success of activities which focuses on language forms. That after the class the session, the teacher has to evaluate the student, summarize the lessons today and evaluate the success, what they have understand about the lessons. The next one, the activities in this section demonstrate both the teacher-led introduction of new language and material design to enable students to work things out for themselves with teachers' help. That teacher have to help the students to demonstrate the activities. B1, introducing new language. Provide the context for the introduction of new language. For example, like students are asked if they ever read science fiction, making sure that they understand what genre of fiction we are talking about. Then ask them what happened in that science fiction. They can be prompted to say what they would expect to find in science fiction texts. For this point, the student can be asked to study or to learn new things. Like teacher asks them to read the science fiction, and then they can learn new things, learn new words, learn new sentences from that text as well. Let's move to the next. Another thing, when the students have read the text and shown that they have understood it by answering comprehension question, we can then ask them to say what they think happen next. What will happen next, do you think? So after the reading, the teacher can ask them that what will happen next, do you think? So to let them guess, to let them imagine about the situation of the science or text or the lessons. And ask students to leave things or sentences on the board and ask them to make another language form. Here means that when after the teacher asks them to read and then ask them to list down, like here example, roll was root to coffee. So this one, the teacher wants the student to change the form of the sentence was root to coffee by using should or should not. So they can make the new sentence like example, roll should not be root to coffee. So they learn to make the new sentences here. Another one, B2, discovery activities for here. For here mean that the students are encouraged to work out for themselves how language forms are constructed and used, mean discovering new things. For example here, students have listened to a dialogue, mean the short conversation in which people have been comparing things. Give them the exact forms and ask them to make new sentences with adjectives comparative. Mean the teacher asks the student to listen to a dialogue which the people are discussing about the different thing and comparing things. And then teacher give the exact form like old change to older when we compare to another one like older, new to newer, light and lighter, and then ask them to create or to make the new sentences by using this form. And another one, B3, about the remembering. At various stages of learning, teacher will want students to revisit language forms which they have been exposed to previously, which means that teacher should ask the student again and again in order to make them remember what have learned. For example, today the teacher teaches the student about the present perfect form, and then the next week teacher should ask again about or review again about the present perfect that learned today. I mean ask again and again in order to make them remember about the form. So in the conclusion here today, I describe about my point studying language as below, and I hope that my explanation can be catched by teacher and everyone. And thank you for your listening today. And any questions? Thank you so much for your listening and attention.